Hi, I'm Jenny Fish from One Big Happy Yarn Company. Welcome back to our Cupid Twist Gloves Knit Along. If you still need supplies, check out onebighappy.com. In the last episode, we casted on and knitted the cuff. It was in a 2x2 ribbing. That's knit 2, purl 2, all the way around. Now we're ready to get started on the hand portion of the gloves, starting out with setting up for the cable twist pattern and increasing for the thumb. Let's get started. So here is the beginning of my gloves. I've got 2 inches of my ribbing. That's the knit 2, purl 2. Let's see, we'll go ahead and just measure this out. There we go. I'm measuring from right underneath of my needle to my cast on edge, and it comes out to exactly 2 inches. Now I want to take a moment to look at this cuff. As you notice, I'm using the magic loop method to knit with this. I have a tail down here. This is the beginning of my round. You can put a stitch marker here to notate the beginning of your round so you can keep track of that. But I always just remember because I have my tail here, and with the magic loop method, I knit one side, then I knit the other, so it's just really easy to know. Sometimes if you have one of the ring stitch markers like I have here, they slide off and you lose them. You could use a locking stitch marker at this point as well, but I just wanted to point that out before we go any further, that's why I don't have a stitch marker at the beginning of the round on here. It's just kind of indicated. Now we're going to move on into our pattern. Now when you purchase the kit, it will have a copy of the pattern so you can follow along on there, but I'm just going to run through this first set so you have it. On round 1, we are going to knit 4. So I'm pulling my back needle in and a knit 4. Now what we are doing here is we are going to establish 2 things in this section. We are working the 2x2 right cross cable, which in some of the older patterns you may see as a C2B, but now the revised terminology is a 2/2 right cross. It gives it a little more definition of what you're actually doing in that stitch process. We'll also be working in the thumb increases, and that's the portion here. Okay, so let me show you on this glove here, because this is a right-handed glove. Right now I'm following the pattern for the right hand. It's a little bit different on the left hand because your thumb is on the other side of your hand. So we've just finished the 2x2 ribbing for the cuff. So we are right about here. In this round, we're working 2 things. We're establishing this section right here. That's our cable twist. And we're also starting to increase for the thumb area. And that's this area right here, this little wedge. We're going to be doing increases to create that. All at the same time, but it's okay. The pattern guides you through it, and I'll guide you through these first few rounds. Okay, so we're going to go back to knitting on here. I've got 3 stitches already here. I'm going to knit that 4th stitch. And then we're going to purl 1 and knit 3. I've got 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to do an increase, and it's called a KFB. Now that means knit front, back of the same stitch. Now the reason why I'm doing the increase here is because I want a few more stitches when I get to the palm of my hand. So that way my cuff is a little smaller and then it fans out for the hand portion. So I'm going to do that increase now. Let me show you. You knit, and then you don't take this stitch off your needle. You swoop around back like this, and you knit through the back loop. And this is an increase. Now, the great thing about this increase in this pattern, when you do a knit through the front and back loop, your second stitch looks like a purl bump that fits perfectly right into our cable pattern, because that's going to be where the purl bump is on our next round. So just a little fun little thing to know there. All right, so we've done our knit front and back. We're going to knit 3. 1, 2, 3. One other thing I want to talk about with the mohair yarn. It has this halo on it. It has these little fuzzy things. It makes your project super soft and warm because it collects heat. Occasionally you'll get those little halos wrapped around your needle. As long as you have the base of the yarn, and you'll be able to see it when you have it in front of you, incorporated in your stitch, don't worry about those little strands that may wrap around your needle. You can just slide them right off. As long as you have the base of the yarn strand worked into your project, you won't have a drop stitch. So don't worry about that. It's natural and normal, kind of the nature of the beast of this yarn, but it's well worth it when you get to your finished project. Okay, so I've knit 3. Now I need to do another increase. Knit through the front, swoop around, knit through the back loop. And then we are going to knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm purling 1. That section that I just did there, starting with the first purl stitch, ending with the last purl stitch, and adding in all those increases, that's kind of the setup for our cable pattern for the next round. And you'll be able to see it in your work. You'll see little notches, and then you'll also see your straight stitches. You got to get a little bit more fabric on your needles to really see how it goes and be able to read your knitting. So just follow the pattern and keep going and around and around. Now I'm going to knit 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so I've knit those 6 stitches. Now I'm ready to start setting up for the thumb. Now, in the pattern it indicates place marker for your thumb. Well, as you can tell, I'm using magic loop. I'm at the end of this row. I know this is the beginning of my round right here because of my tail. For me, I don't put a stitch marker here. But for you guys, so you can keep track of where I'm at, I'm going to put a locking stitch marker here so it doesn't fly off the end of my needle. And I'm just going to slide this right in here. Okay. Hang that down there. So now I'm on to the second half. And we are going to make 2 increases in this area. We're going to do that knit front and back thing again. We're going to do it twice. These are the increases for the thumb. Knit through the front loop, swing around back, knit through the back loop. Now I've just created a stitch. I'm going to do that one more time. Knit through the front loop, knit through the back loop. There we go. So now I've just taken 2 stitches and made 4. That's the beginning of my thumb area. Now I'm really going to place a stitch marker on there because this is going to be in the middle of that needle. It's not going to fly off my needle, but I need to keep track of where this stitch marker is. Okay, now the rest, we're just going to continue knitting to the end of the stitches on this needle, and that finishes up round 1. So right here is a great example of what I was talking about before about the halo effect and how sometimes some of the strands will get stuck on your needle. Right here I have a little bit of fuzz on my needle, but if I look, I try to get this as best as I can. Look back at my stitch, you can see the main portion of that yarn is incorporated into that stitch. I have it on my needle here and in the stitch below. So this right here, don't knit into that. That's not a stitch. You just go ahead and slide that right off your needle. It will just go back into your work and you won't ever see it again. So I just wanted to point that out. That does happen. It's normal. Don't stress. So I've just completed round 1. I'm ready for round 2. I have this stitch marker here, the locking stitch marker, to remind me that's the beginning of the thumb increases. And I have this stitch marker here. That's the end of the thumb increases. And now I'm back to the front or the hand part of my glove. So one of the great tricks is this will have a chart to show you this little cable section here. If you use a Post-it note, you can move it along as you go through each repeat of that cable section. Or if you're using like Knit Companion, it has a little highlighter bar that you can move around. But that's a great addition to have because you're doing 2 things in this section. You're working that cable. You're also working for your thumb increases. The cable is a 4-round repeat. And the thumb, you increase every other round. So just to keep yourself on track. Those are some helpful suggestions. All right, round 2. We are going to knit 4, purl 1, and we're going to do that 4 times. So I'm just going to run through that real fast, and this is on your chart, and also the written instructions are in your pattern. Knit 4, purl 1, knit 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, purl 1, and then I have knit 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there's the little purl bump from when we did the increase before, the knit front and back. Now we're just purling into that stitch. It just falls right into that cable pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here I'll show you again. You'll see that little purl bump right there. And we're going to purl. Okay, and then we're going to knit to the end. 3. Make sure I did that 4 times. So to go back and double check that I've done this 4 times, I'm going to look for those purl stitches. I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I did those. Now I just knit all the way around. So the last time in this section between these 2 stitch markers over here, I did an increase. This round, I'm just knitting. It's called a resting round. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and finish knitting, and then we'll start round 3. Round 3, we are doing knit 4, purl 1. We'll do that the 4 times like before. And then we're just going to work the increases for the thumb. And then we can montage. Sorry, I think I got... Okay, so I just finished the first needle of round 3. Now I'm ready for the second needle of round 3, which I'm going to start the thumb increases on this portion. Okay, so I've got the 4 stitches between my 2 stitch markers. I'm going to increase in the first and the last. I'm going to use that same increase, the knit through the front and back loop, the KFB, in the first stitch after the stitch marker and the first stitch before the last stitch marker. Just look, you'll see. Not a big deal. Okay, knit through the front loop, swing around, knit through the back loop. Boom, I've just created an increase. And then I'm going to knit 2 stitches and do that same increase again. Now, one of the things I do want to talk about, as you're working these thumb increases, you're also, again, working the cable stitches. If you get a little confused, always look down before you start that thumb section. If you see a purl bump, you know that the last time you did an increase. If they're all the regular knit stitches that look like the V's, then you did a knit round, so it's time to do the increase. Just a little tip in case you get a little off to find where you're at. Okay, so now I'm just going to continue knitting. Now I'm going to go ahead and knit a couple more rounds, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to do the 2/2 right cross. Okay, so I want to stop and show you guys something. Sometimes this happens. I have a little crissy-cross thing here that does not look normal. So what I'm going to do is take it down and fix it, and I'll let you guys see how I do that. I'll point that out right here. So this stitch right here is going this way, and this stitch is going that way. Something didn't happen here. What happened is I didn't complete and pull the yarn off the needle after I did that stitch. So I've got 2 stitches there, and I need to fix that because there should only be 1 stitch here. What I'm going to do is slide this first off. This is the stitch that didn't get completed in the knitting process. So basically I'm dropping this stitch and then I'm going to fix it like you would fix a drop stitch. If I had a crochet hook, simple, slide it through, grab it and bring it out, but I just happen to have my double pointed needles because that's what I'm using today. I'm going to keep my needle slid into this and swoop around, grab that loose yarn in the back and bring it through the front. Now I've just created a stitch. I've fixed that. I'm going to slide it back onto my left needle because I haven't knit into it with my working yarn yet. Don't want to forget to do that, then we'll have another issue. All right, so that's slid back on there. That stitch is fixed. I can see the V underneath. Everything looks good. I'm just going to continue on knitting. So now I'm at the beginning of the round of round 5. We're going to be working the 2 over 2 right cross. So on round 5, we're going to knit 4 and purl 1. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, purl 1. Now, to make the 2 over 2 right cross, you have a couple options. You can use a double pointed needle, or you can use a little needle like this that's called a cable needle, where you slide your stitches on, hold it in the back. I have the double pointed needles. That's my preference, so that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so you take 2 stitches and you slide them onto your double pointed needle. Okay, now I'm going to hold those to the back of my work, and I'm going to forget they're there for a minute. Then I'm going to knit 2 stitches off of my left needle. 1 and 2. Then I'm going to remember that these are here, and I'm going to knit 2 from the back needle that has those waiting out for me. Now, essentially, what I'm doing is I'm taking a set of 4 stitches, and I'm twisting 2 back and 2 front, and that makes the right cross. I'll show you that again. Then I purl 1. That little purl bump is in between the set of crossed stitches. It gives it more definition and it allows those twists to really pop so you can see them. I did my purl bump. Okay, yarn to the back. I'm going to slide 2 stitches onto my double pointed needle. Hold those to the back. Knit 2 stitches from my active left needle. 1, 2, and then knit the 2 stitches from the back needle. 1, 2, then do that purl bump again, and again, slide 2 stitches onto my double pointed needle, hold that to the back, knit 2 stitches off my left needle. 1, 2, then knit the 2 stitches off the back needle. 1, 2. Okay, so that's how you do the 2 over 2 right cross. And then we're just going to go ahead and continue on in pattern. You'll work your rows of, like I said, the cable pattern is a 4-row repeat. So you just do your knits and purls, and then you do your twist, and then 3 more rounds of the purl, knit 4 stitches, purl all the way through. Keep in mind, at the same time, every other round you're doing your increases where your thumb is. And again, all of this is in your pattern. You can use Post-it notes to keep yourself on track. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then I'll show you what you do when you get to 20 stitches between your 2 stitch markers and you're ready to set those aside for your thumb. Okay, so I have a little sample here where I've just knit the thumb portion because I want to show you what it looks like when you have the 20 stitches between your 2 stitch markers. That's this section right here. What I'm going to do is just basically slide those onto a piece of scrap yarn. So I have needle and thread here. You could also use a stitch holder if you want. I just like the mobility of a piece of scrap yarn because then you can fold it and get it out of the way. So I'm just going to slide all of these stitches onto this needle here and through this extra yarn. Okay, there we go. Now I can get rid of that stitch marker and set that over here. Now once you have these stitches, this is later going to become your thumb. You can kind of see it starting to form. Now what we need to do is cast on 2 stitches, and we're going to be using a backwards loop cast on. Now if you need a little help with that, I do have a stitch support video, and we'll put the link up here. You can click on that to give you a little bit more information on the backwards loop cast on. But basically what you do is wrap it around your thumb and through, and we just need to do 2 of these. We are compensating for that little gap that forms when you pull these stitches off for the thumb. Okay, so I've got those on there. I don't want them to be too terribly tight because I have to knit into them when I come back around, but I want them to hang there. Now I just go ahead and knit into the next stitch, and here we go. Now what you'll do is you'll continue working in both the 2x2 right cross or 2/2 right cross pattern, and you no longer have to do the increases for the thumb because we've already slid those off. So continue on until the pattern for your piece measures about 4 inches above the cuff. Then join me back here in the next episode where we'll finish up the fingers and thumb and be ready to block and enjoy our elegant Cupid twist gloves. Remember, you can get a kit with the yarn and printed pattern at onebighappy.com. Be sure to hit the subscribe button below and click the bell to be notified every time we have a new video. Happy knitting!